Our story begins on Darth Nihilus' darkest day that would turn him into the planet-eating Sith we know him as, because it was the events on Malachor V where Nihilus was created. We don't know much about Nihilus before Malachor V, but we do know he was a human male who served in the Mandalorian Wars, fighting alongside Revan's forces against the Neo-Crusaders. For years, he fought in the war, losing everything in the fighting: his family, his friends, even his will to live. But at Malachor V, as he stood on the planet's surface during the final battle, everything went terribly wrong. The moment had finally come to end the war, and when General Mitra Surik gave the order to activate Revan's secret weapon, he felt something terrible wake up in the Force. A wave of fear washed over him as the mass shadow generator created a huge gravity trap that crushed Malachor V's orbiting fleets in an instant. The ground shook hard beneath him as the planet itself began to crack, and his fellow soldiers died instantly, crushed by the debris or eaten by the dark energies set free. But something different happened to him, something that would change the entire galaxy. Nihilus survived when others died, becoming a wound in the Force, a void of emptiness. Acting without thinking, he drained the life force of a dying soldier nearby to keep himself from falling apart. This act briefly stopped his pain but left him forever wanting more. From that moment, Nihilus's ties to normal feelings were cut. He only felt an endless hunger, not sadness or guilt for the lives he took. He found out that he could survive only by eating the Force energy of other living beings, and with each life he ate, his hunger grew back even stronger. Nihilus's body, already kept alive only by the dark side, began to waste away. Over time, he would lose his physical form completely. Each feeding gave him a short break, but left him even weaker if he went without food, creating a terrible cycle of endless starvation. After the battle, he stayed trapped in the wreckage on Malachor V's destroyed surface, basically stuck among the ruins. Soon, he needed more life force each day just to keep his dying body together, and even while actively draining whatever life was nearby, the emptiness inside kept growing larger. Over time, the dark side's poison ate away at his body until nothing of his original form was left. This faceless ghost would later be named Darth Nihilus by Darth Traya, but at that time, he was simply a being of hunger and dark force energy. The Sith Triumvirate. After the Jedi Civil War, the fallen Jedi Traya, now Darth Traya, found this wound in the Force on Malachor V and saw potential in it. She took Nihilus to the Traya's Academy and became his Sith Master, teaching him to focus and use his hunger as a weapon on purpose rather than let it eat him up without control. Under Traya's training, Nihilus's feeding ability became far more controlled and powerful. He learned to feel the life force of faraway Force-sensitive beings and even drain whole populations across space through the Force. This made him a perfect Jedi hunter in the years to come. Under Traya's teaching, Nihilus accepted his role as what she would call the Lord of Hunger. He got better at his ability to feed on the Force, learning to control the process so he could adjust his feeding as needed. Even better, he learned to feel distant Force presences and drain life across the huge distances of space. This ability would make him the perfect hunter of Jedi. Traya gave him the Sith name Darth Nihilus, a name meaning nothingness to match the emptiness he represented. From then on, he was known as Lord of Hunger, no longer a man, but a living void driven only by the need to feed. In fact, Traya later said that Nihilus's presence alone could kill. His mere presence kills those around him. Spending too much time near the Lord of Hunger turned his Sith followers into dried-up slaves barely holding on to life, showing how even standing in Nihilus's shadow was dangerous. As Nihilus lost what made him human, he stopped speaking in any normal human language. Instead, when he made sounds, an inhuman hollow voice came out, one that literally carried his hunger with it. Hearing this terrible voice was painful. In fact, Nihilus's very speech could cause pain or death to anyone who heard it. Eventually, Nihilus's real body rotted away completely, and to avoid losing his existence to the void, he tied his life force to his mask, armor, and robes through Sith magic. These items became containers for his spirit. Without them, his essence would disappear into nothing. Therefore, the armor and mask were not just clothes, they were Nihilus. Nihilus soon joined with Traya and another of her students, Darth Sion, the so-called Lord of Pain who could not die, to form a secret Sith Triumvirate. Their shared goal was to wipe out the Jedi Order, though each Dark Lord was broken in a different way. Traya Traya, having been thrown out and feeling betrayed by the Force, wanted the complete end of the Force itself. Sion's undead existence was kept going by pain and hatred, and Nihilus was a bottomless pit of hunger that would eat all life if nobody stopped him. By combining their strengths, they planned to finish what Darth Revan and Malak had started, to wipe out the last Jedi in the galaxy. In practice, the Triumvirate's methods worked well together. Sion's Sith assassins hunted and murdered lone Jedi in hiding, while Nihilus worked as a living doomsday weapon. If the Jedi tried to gather or rebuild, he would feel that concentration of life in the Force and eat the entire gathering at once. This meant any world hosting a Jedi meeting became Nihilus's target for destruction. The surviving Jedi learned that even being in the same place was dangerous, forcing them to stay scattered and hidden. Alone, they were far easier targets for Sion's agents. But the alliance didn't last. In 3955 BBY, Nihilus and Sion got tired of Traya's leadership. They attacked their master in the Trayus core. Nihilus slammed her against the platform with the Force, and Sion beat her until she couldn't fight back anymore. Together, the two Sith drained Traya's connection to the Force, cutting off her abilities. Darth Traya was defeated and thrown out, left for dead by her backstabbing students. Thrown out and weakened, Traya came to sadly realize what Nihilus truly was, a monster born of Malachor that, without guidance, could eat everything without caring. No longer controlled by her influence, Nihilus was not a precise weapon, but a wild force of nature beyond control. In exile, Traya began to plan a way to destroy the creature she had helped create. She expected that the Jedi exile, Mitris Surik, who had accidentally played a part in Nihilus's creation at Malachor V, would one day return from the Outer Rim. Traya quietly set up Surik as the answer to Nihilus, believing this wound in the Force could face the Lord of Hunger when the time came. Without Traya's influence, Nihilus existed only to feed. He had no big plan or final goal beyond the next meal. With each feeding, his power grew. But so too did his hunger, doubling after each feeding. He was already dead in every way that mattered. The only question was how many he would kill before he finally fell apart. The consumption of Katarr. In 3952 BBY, Jedi Master Atris came up with a plan, one that sadly became the Jedi Order's biggest disaster. She secretly called the surviving Jedi Masters to a meeting on the Miraluka colony world of Katarr, planning to use their gathering as bait to draw out the hidden Sith threat. Atris herself stayed behind on Telos 4, hiding her absence but quietly spreading word of this Jedi meeting in hopes the Sith would take the bait. She promised the others that if the Sith showed themselves, they could be faced and destroyed. Unfortunately, Atris badly underestimated the power hiding in the shadows. She believed the secret meeting on the Miraluka colony would lure the Sith into a trap she could spring. She promised the remaining Jedi Masters that when the Sith came, they would be ready to strike back. But what she didn't understand was how powerful Nihilus had become. Her trap would work, though not in the way she planned. Drawn by this bright light in the Force, Nihilus felt the Katarr gathering like a burning beacon calling out to his hunger. He immediately set course for Katarr aboard his scary flagship, the Ravager. The Ravager was a wrecked Republic capital ship from Malachor V, a vessel that should have been destroyed. Its hull was cracked and open to space in places. Basically a dead ship kept alive only by Nihilus's power. With this ghost ship and his fleet of Sith leftovers, Nihilus arrived at Katarr to feed. The Dark Lord stood on his bridge and let loose his power upon the planet. He sent out a huge wave of Force energy downwards, an invisible storm that touched every living thing below. When Nihilus was close enough, he spoke a terrible spell, his very voice filled with hunger, and that sound echoed across Katarr, destroying life as it spread. In an instant, Jedi Master Vandar Tokari and the entire group of Jedi at the meeting fell as their life energy was ripped away. Decades of training made no difference. In just seconds, every living thing on the planet was completely eaten. The Miraluka colonists, being naturally Force-sensitive, saw their coming doom through the Force. The entire civilization died in moments, their foresight giving them a brief, terrible awareness of the nothing that swallowed them. Cities full of life seconds earlier had fallen quiet, turned into mass graveyards under a now empty sky. The surface of Katarr was cleaned of all life, turned into lifeless rock and dust. Back on Telos, Atris, who had purposely stayed away from the meeting, felt the shock of those countless deaths through the Force. Only afterward did she fully understand how huge her mistake was. Yes, her trap had drawn out the hidden Sith, but at a terrible price. The gathered Jedi were destroyed, and an entire Miraluka colony was destroyed. Atris had tried to save the Jedi Order by finding its enemies. Instead, her actions almost finished the Jedi Order. Among the destruction, one person survived, a Miraluka woman named Visas Marr. Nihilus found the badly hurt Visas on the surface, and instead of killing her, he knocked her out and brought her aboard his ship. When Visas woke up days later, fully healed on the Ravager, Nihilus silently invaded her mind and showed her a vision of the galaxy through his eyes. In this vision, Visas saw a galaxy where all beings were stripped of the Force, disconnected from one another, and lost in chaos. Nihilus saw himself bringing order to this chaos by eating all life. This terrible sight destroyed her Force vision, literally burning her blind eyes and cutting off her view of anything except Nihilus. In that moment, Visas gave in completely to the being who had killed everyone on her world. Broken by the loss and the dark vision, she became Nihilus's obedient servant, his shadow hand, completely under his control and without hope. Katarr's destruction basically erased the Miraluka presence there, an entire Force-sensitive culture. After this terrible act, Visas Marr became Darth Nihilus's shadow hand, tied to him by a powerful Force bond. Through this bond, created in the vision that broke her, she could feel her master's hunger and pain, and she served him completely, even helping and looking for new feeding grounds when he asked. It was only much later, after the Jedi exile Mitra Surik spared Visas' life and showed her kindness, that Visas woke up to regret. Under Surik's guidance, she turned against Nihilus and began to hate what she had done in his name. But that lay in the future. The Lord of Hunger Ascendant. Having eaten Katarr, Nihilus had gone beyond any normal Sith goal. Politics or revenge didn't interest him. He existed only to satisfy his endless hunger. Even other Siths stayed away from him, knowing that Nihilus would just as easily eat allies as enemies. In the following years, the Lord of Hunger wandered the Outer Rim aboard the Ravager. Followed by a fleet of wrecked warships, he kept going through the dark side. He searched for worlds rich in the Force to eat, and whispers spread of a terrifying Sith Lord who could eat entire planets. The truth of Nihilus's rampage was even more horrible than the rumors. With each feeding, his power and hunger only grew, leaving whole systems lifeless behind him. During this time, Nihilus wandered the Outer Rim with his fleet, searching for worlds strong in Force energy to feed his hunger. Stories of his destruction spread through the galaxy like wildfire, and whispers of a Sith Lord who could eat entire worlds became the stuff of nightmares. But the reality was far worse than any story could describe. Aboard the Ravager, Nihilus's presence had destroyed his own crew. The warship, still cracked and half-ruined from Malachor V, worked only through Nihilus's dark will and a skeleton crew of followers enslaved by his power. Whole sections of the ship were open to space, useless except to corpses and mindless shells. Those sent to serve Nihilus quickly lost their minds and strength, turned into slaves that walked through the ship doing simple tasks, barely alive. The hallways of the Ravager were filled with the proof of Nihilus's hungry nature, each crew member showing the slow death that waited for anyone who stayed near the Dark Lord too long. During this time, Visas Marr acted as Nihilus's agent and messenger. As the one person connected to his mind, she managed tasks aboard the Ravager and helped carry out his will, even looking for important Force echoes or targets for him to feed upon. Tied to Nihilus by the Force, Visas could feel the beating of his hunger within her own mind. She felt that every moment for him was torture, his existence a pain of endless need that only eating life could briefly calm. By now, nothing of the person he once was seemed to remain. Nihilus worked by pure instinct, driven by need rather than thinking. When she looked at her master through the Force, she saw only an all-eating void. Around 3951 BBY, Nihilus's influence spread into the Onderon Civil War. His Sith forces secretly backed General Vaklu's rebels in their attempt to overthrow Queen Talia. Nihilus's agent, Colonel Tobin, Vaklu's second-in-command, acted as the go-between for this partnership. Their goal was to cut Onderon's ties to the Republic, which included getting rid of Queen Talia's Jedi advisor, Master Katarr, one of the last Jedi Masters. Nihilus's followers even set up a camp in the Forbidden Tomb of Frieden Nad on Dixun. There, the Sith performed dark rituals, trying to strengthen Vaklu's rebellion by drawing on the tomb's dark side power and therefore tip Onderon's fate in Nihilus's favor. In early 3951 BBY, Nihilus felt something wrong in the Force, an echo strangely familiar to his own, yet not the same. Unable to understand it, he sent Visas Marr to investigate and get rid of its source. That source was Meetra Surik, the Jedi exile, who had just returned from exile and unknowingly gave off a wound in the Force like Nihilus. Visas found Surik's ship and attacked, trying to capture or kill her as ordered. But Surik defeated Visas in the following fight. Yet instead of killing the Miraluka, Meetra Surik chose mercy, sparing Visas' life and even treating her injuries. This unexpected kindness shook Visas deeply. Nihilus's slave found herself shown kindness for the first time since Katarr, creating the hope that she could escape the darkness she was tied to. Visas' betrayal had begun, and that spark of freedom would prove important in the trials to come. After Vaklu's defeat, Colonel Tobin, hurt and desperate, ran to Darth Nihilus. Taking Traya's trick, Tobin told Nihilus that a secret academy of Jedi was gathered on Telos 4, unknowingly delivering the bait Traya had planned. This false rumor of many Jedi on Telos instantly caught Nihilus's attention. The bait was set, and Nihilus moved to feed. By this stage, Darth Sion himself stayed away from Nihilus. He knew too well that Nihilus's careless hunger could just as easily eat a Sith ally as any Jedi. In truth, the Sith Triumvirate had broken apart in all but name. Sion continued his campaign of terror with elite assassins, picking off Jedi survivors one by one, while Nihilus searched the stars for entire worlds to eat. The two Sith Lords rarely talked now, each following their own path. What remained of the Triumvirate was simply two dark beings with different methods of reaching the same dark goal. Without Traya's influence, Nihilus existed only to feed. He had no big plan or final goal beyond the next meal. With each feeding, his power grew, but so too did his hunger, becoming harder to satisfy after every feeding. By 3951 BBY, only a handful of Jedi were even left alive. Masters like Zez-Kael, Vrook Lamar, Kavar, and Atris, who had not gone to Katarr, were among the few survivors, and they stayed in hiding. Basically, the galaxy had no real defense against the Lord of Hunger. No Jedi could gather to challenge him without becoming his next meal. The Trap at Telos. Meetra Surik, the Jedi exile, had returned to known space by 3951 BBY. Without knowing it, she was special in a strange way. Like Nihilus, Meetra was a wound in the Force, formed at Malachor V. Yet her condition was the complete opposite of Nihilus's. Where Nihilus's wound made him always drain life, Meetra's wound showed up as nothing, an empty spot in the Force. She survived Malachor V by cutting her connection to the Force, making herself empty to its touch. This meant that where Nihilus always ate life to survive, Meetra Surik was an empty space that could not be eaten or filled. In simple terms, the exile's very nature made her the perfect weapon against the Lord of Hunger. This Telos trap was the final piece of Traya's long game. By using Colonel Tobin's false report, Traya tricked Nihilus with the promise of a hidden Jedi Academy on Telos 4. However, the truth was different. Telos had no Jedi gathering at all. Only Atris lived there, and she had fallen from the Jedi path and collected Sith artifacts. Still, Nihilus believed the lie completely. Thinking a great feast of Jedi awaited him, he flew towards Telos with the Ravager, expecting a rich meal of Force energy that didn't really exist. Meetra Surik knew Nihilus would attack, so she set up her own trap at Telos. She got both the Republic Navy and the Mandalorians to work together for defense. Admiral Carth Onasi brought the Republic fleet, and Mandalore the Preserver, leader of the Mandalorians, brought his warriors to help. They all knew that normal fighting alone would not stop Nihilus. After all, how do you fight someone who can eat whole planets? As a result, while their fleets fought Nihilus's escort ships in space, Surik and her allies got ready for the real plan. They would sneak onto Nihilus's own ship. The plan was to get on the Ravager and blow it up from the inside. and fight Nihilus face to face, while the space battle kept his forces busy outside. When Nihilus's Ravager reached Telos, a huge space battle started above the planet. Republic warships shot at Nihilus's Sith vessels, and Mandalorian fighters attacked the Ravager's guns directly. Space was filled with laser fire and explosions, but this battle was really just to distract Nihilus. Using this cover, Meetra Surik led a small team that sneaked onto the Ravager. This strike team had 3 people: Surik herself, Mandalore, who was really Canderous Ordo, and Visas Mar, who had now turned against her old master to help Surik. These 3 people carried the galaxy's only hope of beating Nihilus. They had 2 jobs on the Ravager: plant bombs to blow up the ship and fight Nihilus on the bridge. Walking through the broken hallways, Surik's team fought groups of Nihilus's slave soldiers. The ship itself seemed to cry out from Nihilus's dark power, its hallways dark and frightening. They fought brain-dead Sith soldiers at every corner. These walking corpses were Nihilus's newest victims, still doing his commands but with no minds left of their own. The strike team kept moving toward where the Dark Lord waited. Visas knew the Ravager's hallways well, so she led her friends through the ship's twisted paths. As they moved forward, she could feel Nihilus learning about the intruders on his ship. The dark side pushed down on them like a heavy weight. The whole ship was full of Nihilus's evil power. Then, Visas felt something she didn't expect. Through the force bond connecting her to Nihilus, she felt him getting confused. Nihilus's hunger had found the boarding team, but he could not see Meetra Surik properly. To Nihilus's force powers, the exile was something wrong, an empty space in the force, something he couldn't see or eat. This blind spot in what Nihilus could see would lead to his defeat. The death of emptiness. On the bridge, they found Darth Nihilus waiting for them. Just being near him was terrible. The air got cold and the shadows got darker, like all the darkness came together around him. Even the tough Mandalore felt scared when he saw him. This was not a man anymore, but a living, empty space that had taken a shape. Nihilus welcomed them with a terrible blast of his voice, a sound that hurt their minds with hunger and death. Yet then, something strange happened. Nihilus himself stopped moving. Through the Force, Visas could feel that he was confused. He could not understand what Meetra Surik was. His strongest power, the ability to drain life from his enemies, found nothing to grab when he tried it on the exile. For the first time since Malachor V, Darth Nihilus didn't know what to do. The person he wanted to eat was impossible to touch, an empty space he couldn't reach. And so the Lord of Hunger stopped to think. The shock of his failure made the Sith Lord freeze, unable to believe that for once his hunger couldn't touch what he wanted to eat. Since his main power didn't work, Nihilus had to try other attacks. He threw force energy at her, sent waves of darkness, tried everything to beat the exile. However, Meetra Surik stayed strong, fighting Nihilus with her lightsaber instead. Unlike all of Nihilus's other victims, Surik couldn't be beaten by his one special power. This fight had to be won with regular fighting. And when they fought with lightsabers, Nihilus's problems became clear. He wasn't used to fighting someone he couldn't drain strength from, so the exile's careful lightsaber attacks began to push him back. Every hit she landed made Nihilus weaker because he couldn't steal life energy to make himself stronger again. The Dark Lord had used his draining power for so long that without it, he was losing to the skilled and brave Jedi exile. At one key moment, Nihilus threw Meetra Surik backwards with the Force, almost winning the fight. When Visas saw her friend in danger, she bravely jumped between them. She offered her own life to Nihilus in exchange for sparing Meetra Surik. At the same time, Mandalore ran forward, shooting his blaster and hitting the confused Sith Lord. While Nihilus was still stunned from the broken bond and hurt from Mandalore's attack, he couldn't defend himself. The exile got back up quickly, and together, Meetra Surik, Visas, and Mandalore attacked all at once, finally bringing Darth Nihilus down while he was weak. Darth Nihilus could barely stand now, yet he tried one more time to use his power. Unfortunately, there was nothing left for him to use. All his energy was gone, and there was no life around for him to eat. Right then, Meetra Surik moved forward and struck the final blow. Her lightsaber hit perfectly, cutting down the Lord of Hunger. Nihilus fell to the floor, unable to keep his body together anymore. After the battle ended, Visas walked over to where Nihilus had fallen. Maybe feeling sorry for him, or maybe just curious, she carefully took off his famous mask, wanting to see the face of the man he used to be. there was nothing there. Whatever was left of him disappeared completely. His robes dropped to the floor as his body turned to nothing. Darth Nihilus said no final words. There was nothing left to say, and nothing left of him to say it. So Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger, was no more. The endless hunger that had driven him was put out at last, and the void he represented ate the last of his form as he died. Darth Nihilus had eaten entire worlds, yet died hollow and unfulfilled. Proof that unlimited power without purpose leads only to self-destruction. But his former master, Darth Traya, would chase an even more dangerous goal, the complete destruction of the Force itself. So watch her full story next to discover how Traya became more than any Jedi or Sith before her.